committee of the whole meeting. Time is 5 p.m. And when I can find my copy of the agenda, I will consult it as to what to do next. Okay, that's easy. So we'll start by acknowledging that we are pleased to be here today on the traditional territory of Treaty 6. We acknowledge all those who share a deep connection with this land. The city of Beaumont respects the histories, languages, and cultures of all of Canada's First Peoples, whether they be of First Nation, Métis, or Inuit descent, and appreciates that their presence continues to enrich Canada's vibrant communities. We are all treaty people. The peace treaties bind us all. And that brings us to item 2, modifications to the agenda. Are there any modifications to the agenda?
Thank you, Chair. Administration does not have any changes to the agenda this evening.
Thank you. Then, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda as presented? Councillor Hendricks, thank you. Thank you. All those in favour, please. Shall we use the voting? Do we want to use the voting buttons tonight, or do we want to wave our hands at the screen? Is there any?
We want to use the voting button.
We want to use the voting buttons? Well, thank you, Mayor Stewart. Anybody opposed to using the voting buttons? No? Okay, then please vote accordingly. And I better do the same. And that means I've now got to count the votes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that passes unanimously. Thank you. And that brings us to item 3, presentations. Delegations. First one up is Beaumont and 3A, Beaumont and District Agricultural Society. Offer of sale presentation. I believe, do we have Bruce Walker here? I think we do. I think I see him. No?
Yeah.
Yes, I do. Sorry, I'm juggling too many windows here. Thank you. Mr. Walker, would you like to present with assistance from Richard Ferguson and Grant Tolley as required?
All right. And Grant is on and Richard Ferguson is on. All right. Good afternoon, Your Worship, Mayor Stewart, esteemed councillors, and any administrative staff that might be partaking on this particular session. So you were sent a PDF of the presentation, I understand. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, I'm going to try. This is a whole new situation for me. I'm in an Airbnb in Medicine Hat, 8 degrees Celsius today with like 3 feet of snow melting everywhere. And and I just got on Wi-Fi, and we'll see how it goes here. Can I share the screen?
You should be able to, yes, and we'll bear with you because we've all been here at one time or another. Well, maybe not. Maybe not in your exact location, but certainly in this situation.
Right. Yeah. Ignore the picture behind me. I think I had set that the last time, and it's still there. So at any rate, share screen. There we go. I am going to share. I'll try the PowerPoint, see how that goes. All right, let's do this as a...
Looking good so far.
There we go. How's that?
That's good.
All right, very good. So as you know, my name is Bruce Walker, and I've been a member of the Beaumont District Agricultural Society for somewhere between 25 and 30 years. It's probably 27 or 28. I don't remember exactly or have any record of when I actually joined. So I have probably the longest standing history of the current group of board members and so on. So hence I was selected to do the presentation. So for your reference, our Agricultural Society is a nonprofit organization and founded under the Agricultural Societies Act of Alberta. We are also a charitable organization as far as Canada Revenue Agency is concerned. So we, on January 11th of 2020, we celebrated our 30th anniversary. So we're almost at 31 years now. And for most of those 30 years, 31 years, the Ag Society, Beaumont District Ag Society, and Beaumont, whether town for many years or now city, have benefited from a good relationship, good working relationships for the most part. And so in 2000, we purchased some land out, which was then outside of Beaumont. It was in Leduc County. We've also had a very good relationship with them. And so we purchased that land in the year 2000 and started slowly developing it. Community gardens and sand ring arenas. And so just a quick note as to where we're located. This image is from the Elan Area Structure Plan, and you can we attempted to draw on it. It's fairly crude. The red outline includes the black, and it goes right around the parcel, it was an 80-acre parcel with an acreage taken out, so 71.3 acres left that we own. And the black square is the north 40 plus acres roughly that we are considering looking at selling. So the mandate for Beaumont District Ag Society includes preservation, demonstration, interpretation of Beaumont's agricultural heritage. We've done this through agri-recreational and cultural events and we have facilities that are used. I'll just touch on the facilities a little bit. The Beaumont Cross Country Course is the only one of its kind in the capital region. Then of its kind, I guess you would be semi-private, semi-public. I don't know how you want to view that. I think there is at least one private one, but we have clients that come to use it. They book to use it, and they come from throughout central Alberta. We have people that come from Calgary and Airdrie area in the south, Bonneville to the east and northeast, Edson to the west, and then of course communities north of Edmonton that also come and use our facility. This year usage was down somewhat, as can be expected with the conditions that are prevailing. We also have the Jerry Pitsula Community Gardens. There's almost 100 plots. And so every spring we tend to have a waiting list for people to get a garden plot. There are 2 stadium-style demonstration rings, sand ring arenas, I call them. Those were some of the first things we developed. And I think just about all of you were at the musical ride in July 2019, which was very successful, held in that space. And we also have other outdoor spaces. All of our spaces are basically outdoor. And there's, we've got Beaumont Blues and Roots Festival coming back to use our space with a mini festival this year, very successful, kind of a model for some things we'd like to do in the COVID world. So we've got some things happening that we're developing for the future of this property and the future of the Ag Society as well. The Colby Heritage Barn is still needs a lot of work. Magnan House, many of you know, it just got moved to the property on October 29th. There's a grain elevator coming in 2021. And we eventually hope to create a heritage farmstead, which would be near and around the house itself, the Magnan House. So a little bit of information on the Ag Society mandate. I'm losing my place here. So most agricultural societies are set up in order, in fact, they have to, as part of their mandate from the government, is to do events and have facilities that the community can access. So that land was purchased in 2000 with this in mind. And as I mentioned, we've run agricultural, equestrian, and related outdoor recreational events and endeavors on that piece of property. So that vision and purpose is still remaining entrenched in the Ag Society mandate. Just for information, the mortgage on that property was retired in 2011. So we have an offer this is an official, I guess, presentation with an offer to sell to the city of Beaumont. There's this bullet in here about sale consideration. At one point, we were kind of calling it a caveat, and that's way too strong. Our board is making the offer, first refusal to the city of Beaumont, because we would like to see the city consider to use at least a portion of the land for recreational cultural purposes, in keeping with the original intent of the property. We thought the best chance would be to offer to the city to do that. We're not going to hold the city to it, but I think there's some great opportunities there to work with the Ag Society, remembering that we're keeping the southern 25 to 30 acres or so, and that's where the community gardens is. That's where the Colby Heritage Barn is located. The Magnan House and the future Heritage Farmstead will be there. So there's going to be cultural and recreational events happening on those sites. The picture you see here with the orange line, that's something I did a few years ago. We were first offered this property, or offered to sell this property to a developer back in 2014. And the board at that time decided that they would not sell for at least 5 years, not sell any property for at least 5 years. And in the future, if they did sell some land, they would retain 25 to 30 acres or so in the south for activities that are currently established there, activities and facilities. So, that orange line, actually, I used Google Earth to measure the north part, and it's 42.5 acres, according to Google Earth, which is probably a little bit, not all that accurate, at any rate. So again, why sell this? So I'm going to be covering the same ground here, basically. Other than mentioning that we're being being squeezed, or we foresee being squeezed on three sides with urban development. So I think the gardens and barn as a community center and so on are not incompatible with urban use, but the outdoor recreation with equine and other large animals, if that occurs, that could be a potential area of conflict. In addition, our partners that help build and operate the Beaumont cross country course have always wished that it were larger and more interesting. It's fairly flat, not that many features. So we had a group go out a few years ago, and they came back with a list of what they would really like. So that cross-country course and some of the equine stuff would eventually move when we sell the north piece of land. And as mentioned there, we would acquire land elsewhere for equine and large animal facilities. And we would use funds to help develop and operate the existing projects and strategic plan that is in place for the southern piece of land. Why the request for the sale condition? Well, I've already gone over that, mentioned that we would be hopeful that the city of Beaumont could use a land base and at least part of it for some recreational cultural endeavors, facilities that might benefit the Beaumont and district residents with those kinds of uses. We would like to see those lands continue in similar types of uses, perhaps more cultural we could add in there, and recreational for residents. Where to from here? Well, we would like you to consider this request. And so this is a first right of refusal offer. And so we were pleased to enter into any discussions and so on that would be associated with this. We can move on at this point to questions, unless, is there anything to add, Richard or Grant?
Nothing from me, Grant here. No, I think you covered all the points very well, Bruce. Unless I can answer some questions.
Okay.
Yeah, me either. It's fine, Bruce.
I can barely hear. I hope you folks could hear me. This is an extremely directional microphone on this computer. All
I'm
right.
hearing you. I'm hearing you very clearly, Bruce.
Okay, good. Yeah, I tried to speak at it. So for the most part.
Okay, well, thank you for the presentation. I can't immediately think of questions that I need to ask, so I'm going to open this to the rest of the committee. Are there any questions for the presenters? And could you unshare your screen, please, Mr. Walker?
Yes, there.
Thank you. So, Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Chair Stout. And thank you very much for the presentation, Mr. Walker and company. That was very, very enlightening. I just have one question about the land that is for sale. Are there currently any trails built on that for the equestrian that might be worth saving, or would that land, depending on what the city's use, have to be reconditioned?
There are no trails. It's bare land in grass and a mixed grass that was planted years ago. There are lots of we call them jumps, so equine jumps, but those can be moved when the time comes, and they would be moved when that happens.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Mayor Stewart?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much to the Beaumont District Ag Society for the presentation. It was really well done. I got a couple of questions. What kind of time frame are you looking at selling this in?
I don't think we're in a huge hurry, although we could use the funds. But
Are we talking months or are we talking years? Because we have a large number of competing pressures right now. So,
do you want to field that, Grant? Have you thought about that?
Well, sure, I can respond to that. As Bruce mentioned, I don't think we're in a big hurry, and just with an understanding of council's budgeting process, we understand that you're in discussions as we speak for the 2021 budget, so we wouldn't necessarily expect anything to happen during 2021, which means, I guess, by default that we would be looking at 2022 budget year or fiscal year for things to really get into motion. But I think we would like to, within the next few weeks or months, certainly to get discussions going if the city of Beaumont is indeed interested in pursuing the purchase of this property.
okay, yeah, we would definitely need some time to sit and talk as a council if this fit our strategic plan. Am I coming through okay? I see lots of people straining.
I can barely hear.
Okay.
That
Sorry,
could be
what I
this.
was saying was yeah, we're gonna need some time as a council to sit and consider and think about it. I guess
Right.
my next question, my follow-up would be, have you thought of a price point for this?
Yes, I think we have. I will tell you that in 2014 we were offered 60,000 an acre, and we've explored the range of properties out there around Beaumont that have sold recently. There's some land that sold recently as high as 80,000 an acre, I believe. And and there's not a lot for sale right now, as far as we know. But so we would like more than less, of course. But and the other, back to your first question as well. I think we would like to know of the interest and where we're going sooner rather than later. But the actual sort of finalizing it and getting it, getting the paperwork done and all the rest of it doesn't have to happen, maybe like Grant mentioned, until like 2022 or something like that. Although we would like to know where we're going. The first right of refusal thing is kind of important. Do we explore other avenues sooner rather than later, kind of thing? So plus once things go through, then we have to start looking for property elsewhere to move the equine stuff to. So so we're hoping that once things go through, as we've seen around us, development takes a while. We can continue to use the property as it is being used now with the equine stuff until we're able to find a new property and move jumps and everything to that property. Is that helpful?
Yeah, no, that's very helpful. I appreciate that. And I'm sure council can carve some time out of the next couple of weeks during budget to at least discuss the first right of refusal portion and whether or not this fits our strategic plan and is where we want to go. I think we can do that at a minimum. But yeah, and so I appreciate where your heads are at. I don't think we're going to get to an answer for you tonight, but I'm sure we can get to it in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr.
No.
Chair.
No, that's not the purpose of this meeting. I don't think we can get to an answer at all tonight. No, I don't think that's the purpose of the meeting.
We didn't expect that.
But thank you for the presentation. So if my maths is right, 40 acres at, did you say $60,000 an acre? Works out at about $2.4 million there.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, Councillor Hendricks.
I was trying to get ahead of this discussion before the math came out, so but the math's out now. So just given my background, I probably wouldn't be talking about that math today, but that bell has rung. I'd ask our admin then, what are the next steps at this point with respect to this conversation? I'd like to hear some direction as to how we'd pull this thing into a conversation. So.
Oh, excuse me, if I'll go ahead. If I can offer, we are about to enter into a budget workshop. We could add that as a topic of discussion and see where that fits for 221 or 222, however council wishes to proceed.
Right.
May I add one other thing Perry reminded me of? We are prepared, and it would only be right, is to get a registered appraisal property before setting final price and so on.
Right, and that's thank you, and that's actually where I was trying to go before we start talking numbers. Get a third party appraisal. Let's get that done. Bring that conversation back. In fact, there's even enough time between now and budget, the budget process, I think, to pull that together. Given what I'm used to getting out of our third party appraisers, so. At least it'll give you a robust discussion about next steps and timing and all the rest. So, but I'm all about doing that first, and then we can explore the number, as they say later. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dunlock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, gentlemen, for attending this evening. Much appreciated. Just to clarify a point, if you could, Bruce, I know initially the idea was to sort of, I agree, a word caveat is too strong. I agree with what your comment there. It's a strong suggestion that Badass wants the city to use this property for recreational type purposes. And then you mentioned a comment saying you wouldn't hold us to it. So just to kind of clarify for my members of council here, just to clarify the intention of the sale and how we're going to use the property as a city of Beaumont. I'm not saying we wouldn't use recreation, but your comment kind of made me want a little more gray area than I thought there might be. So can you just maybe clarify the position of Badass in terms of how they want this land to be used by the city, which coincide with the first right of refusal to buy it. So just to clarify, if you wouldn't mind, please, as best you can.
Grant or Richard would like to comment on that.
Maybe I can jump in, Grant here. When the board considered making this first right of refusal offer to the city of Beaumont, the motion that was passed for the Agricultural Society's board said that this was our preferred option to go to the city because we would and ask or offer first to the city because we felt that the city would be in a position to in the future use this property for what we originally intended it to be used for. The motion then, and if the city refuses the offer, I guess, then the whole matter goes back to the Agricultural Society board to see where do we go from here.
Right.
So we felt that that adding that as a request that the city would strongly consider using it for purposes which matched our the Agricultural Society's purposes And being next door neighbors in that scenario, we would be complementary because the southern portion of the property would be used for outdoor recreational stuff. We felt that the northern property would complement that. The other option is that if the city's not interested, then if the Ag Society wanted to sell, it would go probably out for bids to developers. And we have not decided at this point that we would even consider that. So this was kind of the first step to fulfill our mandate, I guess might be the best way to put it, while also transferring the property. Otherwise, it becomes a pretty transactional and commercial decision for the board, which I'm not sure would actually be passed. I don't know if that helps, but that's kind of our thinking at the moment.
Thank you.
One more thing I could add, perhaps, is that we kind of learned about the same time or shortly thereafter about the Beaumont owning the property just kitty corner southeast of us, and that it's got a lot of recreational development intended for it. So that kind of puts a different light on the whole picture. So we realize that you can only have so much recreation and cultural activities in certain areas. So hence we kind of lightened that statement a little bit. Were you able to hear that, Bill? Sorry.
You were cutting in and out.
Yeah.
Sorry, say again?
It was cutting in and out a little bit there, but you're clearer now.
Okay, yeah. We since learned, since that motion went through, about the property the city purchased just to the southeast of our property, and that there's recreational activities, recreational facilities intended for that piece of property as well. So
Thank you very much.
that kind of covers, changes the picture a little bit.
Yes, thank you. No more questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, very well. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for the presentation. I think that unless there are any, I'm not seeing any further questions. Just let me double check that, or requests to speak. So unless there's anything further you wish to add, thank you for the presentation, and we'll proceed.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
That brings us to item 3B, which when I've juggled all these windows, I'll tell you what it is. Draft Council Policy number C37, Council Social Media Policy. Who's going to speak to this? I believe it was Ms. Mohammed.
That's correct. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, committee, and good evening to the public as well. So in front of you tonight, we do have a draft council policy for you, which is the council social media policy. This came before committee of the whole quite a while ago, March 19th, 2019. And there's been some significant changes to this policy since you saw it before. The way that it's laid out as a policy, it's intended to be enabling in the sense that it lays out that members of council would have, if they choose to, their own social media accounts. And then it lays out that if you so choose to have your own social media account, what are the guidelines that would surround that? The policy also highlights how the social media and accounts actually do use city resources in some sense, the election year requirements, and then also reference to the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act when it comes to posts and information that you're saving on any technology that you have, and the information related to city business, and how that anything that is related to city business is not considered personal. So I'm here to answer any questions that you have and to receive any feedback. And if all is well with this policy, then a recommendation to move it to council for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mohammed. I think I'm a little confused as to what this actually proposes. Does this, I'll start off by asking, does this refer to existing social media accounts that councillors may already have on their own private equipment? Or is it inviting councillors to create a social media presence using city facilities, using city, what's the word, hardware, I suppose, or hardware and software?
It's both. So if you had a personal social media account, but you're posting city business on that account, then it falls under this policy. And what it's trying to do is very much define what would be your personal account if you have one, and what would be considered a city account. And what it tries to do as well is clarify that during an election, what those rules would be in terms of if you're going to have, say it was your personal account and you had been putting city information on it and you were involved in the election, you would have to scrub all that city information out of there and change it back to a personal account.
So, okay, there's a whole raft of questions that I want to ask about that, but I'm going to let the other councillors speak, because I see Councillor Munkoff-Swain already has his hand up. But I will, yes, we'll see if some of the questions I have in mind are going to get asked. Councillor Munkoff-Swain?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And I mean, you go ahead. If you've got questions, you go ahead. I've got kind of a list of them with this, and so I'm not sure the best process to go through that. I would like if we could share the screen and put the policy up. I can do that if folks want me to do that, or if administration wants to put the policy up, just so we can kind of follow and track through some of the comments.
Ms. Mohammed, are you able to put the
Sure.
policy up on screen? Thank you.
Make sure. Right. Let me just expand this. Right. So nice and clear for you?
Super. Thank you.
Okay. So we'll start on the policy. There we go.
So, Martin, did you want me?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Questions or
keep shooting. Yep.
So I guess first up, in the it talks about right at the bottom of the policy statement there. It says it says a member of council's use of social media is not completely cost-free and relies on publicly funded resources. So I've got a few themes around that, but I was just curious on what the intent of that was, and I'll share my experience. So I have my own council social media page. I use that and communicate with that from my personal cell phone. I don't use any Beaumont assets or publicly funded resources that I can see. So I'm just curious on what you meant by that statement there.
Okay, so we actually defined it just so it was clear in the policy. Yeah, so it's exactly that. If you're sharing any your email account, any logos, any associated municipal resources. So say if our comms people had prepared something and you're flipping that out on your social media site, it's still using public resources. The other piece of it, I just lost the other thought that I was going to throw in there.
Sorry.
It's gone now. It will come back later.
Sorry, I get that to an extent, right? But we don't have a policy. There's no policy, I guess, handing out materials versus sharing them on social media and all that sort of stuff, right? Like publicly funded resources, I struggle with, like, there's no additional publicly funded resources that are required with that. So to me, I'm not sure why we need to define that. Why we need to include it in the statement, I guess, would be my 2 cents on that. Therefore, not sure we need to define it.
So the way that this policy has set up enables the councillors to also grow into this. So as the city gets bigger and you grow as a council, potentially to having constituency offices and maybe staff who are looking at your social media or monitoring that, or responding to that, or like we often get inquiries that come through and then they come through the city and then we're responding and providing answers to that. That's all publicly funded. So that's what the intent was trying to show there. And the other thing that I think I just want to make clear in how you open this, when you said I have my own account on my own phone, but as soon as you discuss city business on there, under the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, that's not private. You're discussing city business. So
Agreed.
yeah, it's under the public umbrella now.
Yeah,
so
no, I totally. Sorry,
yeah.
I get the definition between public and private and representing, the city and all that sort of stuff. But publicly funded resources, I guess, is where the challenge. But I'll maybe chat to you a bit offline about that. I think we can move on. 4.4, if you want to scroll down to. It says all members of council have a responsibility to report inappropriate content to the mayor, who will work with the CAO to investigate and determine appropriate course of action. So this jumped out to me for a couple of reasons. One, it could be we might need a second mayor to be able to go through and manage all the inappropriate content on social media. So I get what we're trying. I get the intent of it. But anytime you're saying that we have a responsibility to report inappropriate content, I mean, there's inappropriate content every day all over the place. So I want to make sure that I'm agreeing to a policy that I'm going to actually enact and follow. And so a lot of the time there are inappropriate content that is shared, and I just respectfully ignore it. But if I was to follow the letter of this policy, that would be in contravention of it. So I'm just curious in your thoughts around the thinking around that.
Yeah, I see in reading it now, I think the intent of this more is inappropriate content by other members of council, not about the public so much. I mean, for goodness sake, the things that get by the public.
Okay.
It's not the mayor's job to monitor the public so much, but this is meant to be like councillors acting within their code of conduct. So we could add in there of other members of council, and then that would further clarify that. It just gives an avenue that if one of your colleagues was maybe they were really beating you up on, or bullying you, it gives a recourse, to kind of address it.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot more sense now. I would agree to add to that, just to clarify that we're looking at that other councillors, and that certainly is the mayor's job. But yeah, so that makes sense to me. Chair, I got a few more questions here. I see other hands raised up. Did you want me to keep going down my list and then pass it over, or how do you want to manage this?
You're muted.
You're on mute there, mate.
Yeah, you've had your two. I think we should let somebody else have a go.
Sure.
But we can certainly get back to you. I've got some more questions I'd like to ask as well. So, all right. Councillor Danlock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to perhaps clarify a point raised earlier in Sam's question. So just to clarify, Eleanor, if you won't mind, please. I, of course, have a councillor Facebook page I use to push out information to our citizens. And I quite often and regularly repost posts made by the city already on my councillor Facebook page, which I believe is in fine use of the policy, but it talks about using the exact wording up previously about the cost of, sorry, on the previous page that Sam referred to, the previous point about the cost of it. So it's not completely cost-free and relying on public funded resources. My interpretation is my reposting a city post is not using publicly funded resources. Or am I wrong in that assumption? Because I'm using my personal computer, not my council computer. I'm using my social website that I pay for with internet from my own personal use from home, just to make sure that I'm not offside with that point about publicly funded resources when I'm reposting a city post that's already been out there on social media. Can you please clarify if what I'm doing is right or wrong based on the policy that we're presented with today, please?
Thank you. The intent there is not really to say right or wrong. It's just simply pointing out that city content is not cost-free. So by you reposting, there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely, that's what the policy is encouraging you to do.
Right.
When it becomes more of an issue is during election. So it becomes a question of, are you getting access and using content that others may not be getting access to and using that through a social media account? That's why the policy kind of further goes into detail saying, hey, you can keep this account, but you're going to have to scrub all the stuff out that relies on publicly funded resources. Right? So that may be like, I don't know, anything that would give you an edge over someone who didn't. So carefully curated communications piece that's Beaumont Communications put together that maybe no one else has access to, and you're using that. So that's really what the intent of that line is.
Okay, that's what I had thought was the intent, and my conduct right now is obviously on side, which is a good thing. So not to go down the rabbit hole, Mr. Chair, but it's a quick follow-up then to the last comment from Ms. Mohammed was that, so assuming the next fall at the re-election time, should I choose to run again, I can leave my councillor page that is, have my campaign page, which I will post things on, but my council page will still only be reposting city posts that are already there, and I'll be fine with the policy. And that does create the right thing to do. You have a separate campaign Facebook page, and you have your councillor page where you push out information, as I'm doing now, which would make sense to me. So thank you, Mr. Chair. That's all I have for right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that a correct summation, Ms. Mohammed?
Yes. Yeah.
So the intent here is that during an election period, that any candidate, any candidate who also had a councillor page, then had a separate campaign page?
Yeah, well, the intent is that, I mean, you're still a councillor until the election, right up until the election, right?
Yes.
So you wouldn't use your councillor page, if you had one, to campaign on. You would keep your election stuff completely different than your city business. So
Okay.
It's nice and clean. That's what it's trying to get at there.
Okay, and thank you. I'm thinking then that maybe we need to be explicit about that. Okay. It's sort of implied, but I think perhaps it could be more explicit. Yes, I'm also puzzled by the cost-free or not being cost-free, because again, in my case as well, I mean, my own personal example is I maintain, well, my election page when I got elected became my councillor page, and yeah, I use it to repost information from the city as well as comments of my own. But I do that entirely on my own equipment, on my own Facebook account, on my, that's paid for by entirely by me. So there's no hardware cost, and in fact, the marginal cost to the city, all those posts have already been prepared and published, right? The marginal cost to the city of me reposting is nothing. It's not a cost issue as I see it.
So it's a question of, say, your example that you've just given. You had a a page that you used that you ran on election, and then you moved that over to being an elected official Facebook page. So maybe on your elected official Facebook page, you use your Beaumont email address, which falls under publicly funded. So when it comes to election time, you would get rid of that Beaumont email address if you chose to use the same page. You didn't have two different pages, you only had one. You would scrub everything out of there that was Beaumont, City of Beaumont. Like, so in other words, people can't email you about election material to your Beaumont address. You would have your own private email address for that to go to.
Yes. So as a practical matter, probably just easier to set up a re-election page and avoid the whole mess. Avoid getting into the mess of, well, you haven't scrubbed this thing off that you should have done. All right. Okay. I'm Councillor Van Newkirk.
Yeah, I'll try and keep it to a couple of questions and then I'll pass it on too. But seeing as how we're on that topic, I think I'll continue down that thread and that thought, Martin. So section 5.5.1 actually describes what Ms. Mohammed is talking about, and suggests, what actions might look like to, excuse me, to separate the council pages, I guess. But my comment to that is, and the challenge with that is that you work to gain likes and follows. Everyone here knows how social media works. And that's a facet, and it's a way that people campaign. And to go through and take a email or take a Facebook account and scrub that you've used for 4 years and scrub the City of Beaumont shared content out of it is not reasonable. It's not a feasible thing to do. And so so I challenge that. I understand what you're saying. I understand what the policy says, but the practicality of that is not there. So I'll leave that comment for there. And then I'll move back maybe to section 4.2. The mayor is the official spokesperson for the city and is responsible for ensuring accountability for all members of council retaining to this policy. So the question I have there is, what process is going to follow this policy? So when the mayor goes to do that, when he goes to do 4.2, what is the process that he's going to follow to do that? I don't see that here.
Thanks. It's a good question. And I'm just flipping over to the upcoming council governance plan, or because I'm wondering if I've made the tie into that or not. So the process for that, you actually likely wouldn't put in the actual policy. That would be perhaps in your governance manual. That's what I was looking for.
No, and that's kind of the point.
The way that you would treat this, and I'll have to go back to the manual to see what I put in that draft. It would be a grievance like any other grievance. Like, say you had someone who was treating people poorly in council meetings and you wanted to make a complaint, you would make that complaint to the mayor. The steps that could be taken could definitely be outlined in the manual, and it could apply to social media. It could apply to behavior in chambers. We also have, I apologize, I don't have it in front of me right now, but the code of conduct in there as well.
And I think like the thought process that you're leading down right now is good. And I think that's probably the answer per se. But just, I just wanted to throw that out there, is like, we got to make sure that, the mayor's doing this. The mayor's got to have a tool, and we got to make sure that we say what those tools are. And you read my mind with the governance manual. I was going to suggest that. So, because I know that you're working diligently on that, and every time something pops up like this, it's a nice thing to be able to include in there. And then I'll do one more, and then I'll cede and put my hand down, and then put my hand back up and get back in line. 4.4, I had a whole bunch of red pen all over that, but I think by the original, or the statement of about it being by other members of council is good. So let me just talk one big picture thing, and then I'll cede. That would be 5.2.2. and 5.2.3. Just a suggestion there. Document flow. A more positive way to present things is to say what you can do, then what you can't do. And in this document here, we say what we can't do, then we say what we can do. 5.2.2 is what you can't do, and 5.2.3 is what you can do. So I would, just as a matter of document flow and thought organization, I would actually just do a flip-flop on 5.2.2 and 5.2.3 if you're following. So just a suggestion there. So I'll cede and get back in line here in a second.
Thank you, Councillor Van Nieuwkerk. Okay, while we're on the subject of the document itself, I'd like to add, could you crank us up to 5.2.1, please, Ms. Mohammed? There we go. On reading this, I was just a little bit confused. 5.2.1, a social media account is identified as members of council's social media, council's social media account, or one that uses publicly funded resources if it, and then there's, what is there, 8 conditions. It's not clear to me initially reading this, does this, are those ands or ors in between those? I mean, there is an or at the in between G and H. What I'm getting at is, does this qualify as publicly funded if any one of those conditions is met, if all of them are met, or if there's some number in between that?
Any one of them.
Yes, reading it, that was the conclusion I drew, and you've reinforced it with your answer to earlier questions. But again, I'm thinking, you know, maybe it should be, there should be some wording in there that makes it clear that if any of the following apply, or whatever's needed.
Okay.
All right, Councillor Munkhoff-Swain, I gather you had some more to ask.
Yeah, thanks, Chairperson Stout. Could we go to 5.2.2b, please? Right there. So, thanks. So a member of council must not post the following content using any social media account that is identified member of council social media. Content that promotes or appears to promote any candidate or political party in any election, municipal, federal, or provincial. So I think I get what the intent is. Like, you don't want me out there with a social media using a Beaumont City Councillor page to, you know, cheer on so-and-so in a leadership race, or help a provincial party potentially get elected. I get that. Where I struggle is the municipal side of things here. And I'm going to have more comments as we get further down, because I to build off Councillor Van Nieuwkerk's comments. If I was to summarize it, you know, there is, when we get into an election campaign, I am a member of council, and during, you know, if in however many months I'm running again, I'm gonna, when the election campaign comes on, if I'm sharing information about my personal election messaging, that would technically contravene this policy. So was the intent of B to talk about anything external, to help promote any external, or were you referring to the council member as well, included in that section?
Okay, I hope I understand it. Okay, the question. So I think if you're using an account where you're identifying in that count as a city councillor, member of council, during an election or not, like a municipal election, provincial, federal, or any sort of leadership race, you wouldn't be using that account where you're identifying yourself as a municipal councillor to endorse anyone else in an election or any other party politically. if you were choosing to do something like that, you'd want that on a completely separate page, a personal page, where it doesn't have city business on there. So there's a very clear distinction between city business and personal politics.
Yeah, great. I agree with that. I might circle back up to that depending on the next discussion. But thanks for clarifying that. That makes sense. Can we quickly go to 5.2.2E? Must not post the following: releases council meeting decisions prior to their official release through municipal minutes and proceedings. And then in brackets, we say approved recorded online video. So again, I'll play a real time scenario at the end of a meeting. And we've had this discussion before where we didn't think it was reasonable to wait for minutes to be created, to be published before we're allowed to comment on it. So, you know, if we end a meeting, someone sends a message, how did this vote go? Are we to assume that because everything is recorded online, like I can share the answer of that, provided it was in a public realm, obviously? I don't quite understand what the brackets approved recorded online video is trying to speak to.
This is more parliamentary procedure. Essentially, it is not official until it's signed off on. That's what it comes down to. So if you were to post or inform someone of a decision, technically it's not official until it's signed off on as official in the minutes.
Okay, sorry.
I realize it's, and this is a real struggle of modern social media versus like minutes of a meeting, and then the committee or council saying, yes, those minutes are true, and that did indeed happen. Therefore, we approve of these minutes and we sign off on it.
Yeah, so
nothing is official until it's signed off on. You know, this is something that could be reworded to say that if information was to be released after a council meeting, because technically right now you can go on YouTube and you can see exactly what happened at the meeting, that it's predicated by saying unofficially, this was what had happened. And
yeah,
then that
I think
resolves that kind of conflict.
No one wants to be in the position where they if someone asks a question, we say, well, we can't talk about it until we officially share the minutes or approve the minutes in a meeting 2 weeks from now. I think that does need to be reworded. I also think that we have recorded video on. You know, I don't think the distinction between approving the minutes and two weeks makes a difference if we've got the recorded meetings online. So I wanted to raise it. I don't have a solution for you here, but just think about crafting that. And again, I want to get to a point where I can vote yes on this policy, then I'm going to follow it. But in a real life scenario, if someone asks me a question, what happened at council, I'll wait for minutes to come out. Sorry, but that's just, I want to wording is accurate for that. So thanks for that. The last one for me, maybe not the last one, but the biggest one for me is if we go to 5.5.1, please. So specific election year requirements, and Councillor Van Nieuwkerk kind of touched on this earlier. So it says, council must take affirmative steps to clearly distinguish between the use of social media for personal and election purposes. And the city official, I get with that. So then that you talk about two approaches. One is maintaining separate election accounts. So what I don't agree with, and the way I read this policy, so correct me if I'm wrong, is that if I've got a social media account that says Australian City of Beaumont Councillor, this policy wants me an account that says San Marcos Swain Beaumont City Council candidate as well, a separate page. That's what the intent of the policy, I think, is what you're looking at here. To Councillor Van Newkirk's point earlier, my strategy on all of that would be in order to avoid, because I totally understand and the need to distinguish between acting as a city councillor versus acting as a candidate, is just renaming the account instead of renaming it to San Marcos Swain City of Beaumont candidate, versus creating a whole second page and losing the context and the content there. So that's what I think needs to happen. Then you've got B there. So I just think we need to scrap B, to be honest. We talk about should they want to maintain a single use, then just scrapping all city logos, all that sort of stuff. I don't think that's realistic. And I don't think what the intent with this section is. The intent here is to ensure that residents don't think that any messaging is being portrayed from a sitting city as your role as a city councillor, and it's also it's also used there so that city council doesn't have an advantage over a non-sitting member. I get that. And so that I agree with not sharing any briefings or any comms plans that are provided to us as city employees, as city councillors. So I guess if I was to reframe my comment and question here, if I was to rename my current account, would you see that as in contravention of this policy, just renaming it?
If I were to approach this as an elected official, I would set up two different accounts, especially this year coming. So in 2021, you're allowed, and everyone's got different strategies, but you can declare in January. So there's a long period of time between January and October, the actual election. As an elected official, there's probably going to be a lot of business you want to conduct through your social media accounts that have nothing to do with the election. So for me, that kind of indicates, if I was going to choose to do something here, I'd keep them separate, two different accounts. But say you're keen and you're like, okay, I want to use this one account. Once you change it over to candidate, then you're no longer going to be handling any city business with those contacts. I hope I'm making sense as I say this.
Yeah, you're making
now what you could do,
sense.
Right? So what you could do is, say you thought, okay, well, I don't really need to go back and forth with city business anymore. I really want to focus on elections. So from January to October, I'm just going to give it an election. I'm going to delete everything I had to do with city business on a site, change it over to candidate. And then what you would do is, and most of the social media sites allow you to do this, like Twitter, Facebook, you can delete any post from a certain date backwards. Like you can delete your history that's on there. And that's really what this is trying to get at. So you would remove, if you had a Beaumont email address, you would remove in the information section, you wouldn't talk about yourself as an elected official in Beaumont. You wouldn't wear the hat of elected official in Beaumont. You would be changing it over to, I'm a candidate running for the next council.
I get that. I just complicating it a lot here. There's no time. Yeah, the election technically being on in January, but everyone's going to decide when they're going to start quote unquote campaigning. I just think it needs to be. I just think in the policy it just needs to state that your communication should clearly identify whether you're communicating as an elected official or as a candidate running for office. That just to me simplifies it, and then we don't for example, we don't have a policy that says, you talk about logos and council, and once we get into January, like, you're not asking us, we're allowed to wear our council jackets out there when we're out there, right? Like, that's technically, that could be construed as campaigning using public funds. So I just think social media is kind of being targeted here. So I don't like 5.4.1 at all. I get the intent of what you're trying to do, and you're trying to protect both council and make it fair for other folks trying to run. But I think if you just simplified it and just said that all communication on social media needs to clearly identify whether you're running for office or you're acting as your capacity as a city councillor, then I think that clears it up. Because I personally, like, I take your recommendation up from the top there, but I would never create two separate pages and go through that. It'll be confusing for everyone. So I'm just trying to find a way, again, to find a policy that I can support and that I would follow.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Van Nieuwkerk, you've been thank you for your patience. Would you like to?
Yeah, you bet. No, thank you. Just a couple of comments first, and then I'm going to take a go at the same topic almost again. Just a thought that I'm going to leave with everybody is, at what point does a social media post become public information? A social media post is always created by someone for public consumption for an intended audience. So at what point do the posts that have been created in the background over the last 3 years by a councillor become public information? I think that's probably something that needs to be weighed a little bit. And when it comes time for anyone to get reelected for anything, I always see people speaking to their track record, looking to the historical things that they have done, touting the communications or touting the connections or touting the attendance at events and all that. And that information is collected in any elected official's account. And so I see the comments that Councillor Monkoff-Swain made in the A and B there of 5.5.1, and I think that I too would struggle to make another account to do this with. The intent is to try and keep a separation of council business versus candidate business. I 100% agree with that. But I think that you can do that by changing the title on your account. Going back and scrubbing all of the data for 4 years I don't think that's a solution. Well, I guess it is a solution, but it's not a solution that I'd be willing to take at this point. So, if I voted for this, I would be in contradiction of this, because I don't think I would do that. One of the things that you want to do is you want to be able to look at the track record and look at what you've done. Elections have changed, and they keep changing, and things are more digital than they've ever been right now. And one of the other statements earlier I've dealt with already on council, and that was that 5.2.2E, the releases council meeting decisions prior to their official release through municipals. I think technology and the speed of information has actually outlived that and has rendered that outdated thinking. I know that by the letter of the law that it's not official until it's approved. I get that. But to realize or think that anyone is going to stop the dissemination of information because there hasn't been a vote on it, I think that's kind of head in the sand, right? So I think technology has actually outpaced that thinking. I understand why we will end up leaving it there is because by the letter of the law, that's what has to happen. So, I'm not suggesting we remove it, but I am suggesting that technology has outpaced that thinking. I wasn't quite sure when you answered the approved recorded online video there that it was clear what was intended there. Maybe you could reiterate that, and maybe we could provide a little bit of clarity on that to help that E along.
So what this is a referral to is you came out of a council meeting, decisions were made. It's not official yet. It's not signed off on yet, but you're making a video of yourself, an online video, talking about all the decisions, and then you're posting it. So like you'd want to have all of that approved before you would post it. I think this E needs some rewording. So let me take it away, and I think I can address what's kind of been brought up here and just make it a little clearer. I also want to take the opportunity to check back on our code of conduct for council, as well as the MGA and where that sits as well, because we just have to make sure that it's all kind of lined up from the top, right? How things are legislated.
Yeah,
and right. The other piece that I want to go back and visit is elections legislation as well, making sure that we fall in line with that.
Okay, I'll maybe start one more topic here, and then I'll have had kind of 3 comments, and then I'll see them come back again. I'll start in on 5.4.1. If you could move to that, please. I'll preface it by saying I don't disagree. And then I'm going to say the next word is but. I've lost sleep and I have gray hair growing in my beard right here from things that have happened outside of my control that, that I'm not going to take responsibility for in life and in council business. So I understand that, members of council shall not use social media to engage in criticism of administration. I understand why we want to be there and why we should be there. And I've seen the perils of, in the news, even of, when this doesn't happen. So I'm not at all saying that it shouldn't be there. The statement can stay, but what I do want to say is that, it's a two-way street here. The decisions that, I guess the outcome of a bad administrative decision on a Friday afternoon affects a councillor from Friday afternoon through Saturday morning, Saturday noon, Saturday night, Sunday morning, Sunday noon, Sunday night, Monday morning, and probably Monday noon before administration can get back to anything on Monday afternoon. And there are times already that I've said, listen, guys, like, I understand that you're frustrated, to a resident who's reaching back based upon an administrative decision that was made. And I've said, I don't make this decision. This is an operational decision. I can look in on it. But the challenge, time and time again, is administration works 8 to 4, 8 to 5. Some of you work way later, and thank you for that. But social media doesn't know hours like that. Social media is 24 hours. It's dynamic, and it keeps going. And it kind of wraps back to the original comment about the mayor having to deal with everything. And I think there isn't enough hours in the day, or 2 or 3 mayors might be required to do that. But I think the wording would be there. So, anyways, I think that I've beat that up enough. Is that I think everyone has to do their best to uphold 5.4.1, but I'm going to put a but in there, right? Like, there are decisions that administration has authority to make that may end up not being the best decisions, but they're made, and they're made on a Friday afternoon. And then council has to bear that brunt all weekend. And it's literally happened to us a few times, right? Improving every day. But I just want that awareness to be out there, right? So, I don't know if you want to comment on that or not, but.
I think what you had said in the commentary of saying that's not something I have control over, that's an administrative or operational decision that was made, that's neutral language. So you would be falling within this category versus if you had said, yeah, the administration is, a bunch of whatever, and or someone should be fired, or this or that. that wouldn't be neutral, and that's what this point is saying. So, but I recognize what you're saying, that sometimes things do happen on Fridays, and for you to be able to put something neutral out there and say it's administrative, it would be, you know, addressed on a Monday with the operational hours, then you'd be falling within the neutral advice part.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, I think I made my point on that one. I'll put my hand down and then re-put it up again in a few.
Thank you. Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Chair Stout. Real good discussion. Ms. Mohammed, I'm wondering when, because I'm sure you're going to do some more research and bring this back to us again. Maybe we already saw it, but I've forgotten what other municipalities might also consider to be best practice in this area. I just would like to compare that again. Mm-hmm. The world keeps changing way too fast for me to keep up with. But when you bring it back, if you could remind us of what's in our code of conduct as well, which you've mentioned already, you're going to be looking at again, and clearly separating what's important during an election and what's our ongoing responsibilities. Because I think you're trying to capture so much in here that it's hard sometimes for me to really get at what you're trying to pinpoint here. So it's going to be full of discretionary, trying to enforce it, and I don't want to put any mayor into that situation. And one other point, and I'll just raise it now. I see that the mayor's responsibility definitely is to look after what the councillors are doing and make sure we're doing correctly. Is it all of council's job then to make sure that any future mayor does the same? How does that work?
Yes, that's a good point. I think that's something I did get in the governance manual, but I didn't transfer over here. So if that was the case, that if you had a problem with the mayor, and it wasn't something that you could actually address with the mayor, like maybe you had tried and you didn't get the response you were looking for, then it would be something that you would address with the CAO. But more so, when you would go, it's awkward going to the CAO because the CAO isn't an elected official. However, if you were to go to the CAO, it'd be more about the point of getting any sort of legal opinion of steps that could be taken, interpretation of acts of what steps could be taken from there. So that's really what would happen if you couldn't get what you need from the mayor themselves. It's a bit, really what happens in scenarios like this, and we see it play out across the province with different politicians, how this all works. When scenarios like that happen, then we find ourselves leaning back on the MGA, which doesn't necessarily give us all the tools maybe that we would need to do something about it. So the CAO could act as trying to be a neutral party between those two politicians to, try and have a constructive conversation. And if that didn't work and there was something more serious going on, then yeah, you would bring in some sort of legal to deal with it. Yeah, and there's any number of scenarios, right, that would happen.
I think the code of conduct needs to guide us overall, and then the social media policy falls underneath that.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
I'll unmute myself. Thank you. Mayor Stewart.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I just have a couple of comments to make. I noticed that we're starting to spiral down into minute details. I got to admit, when I read this document the first time, I was actually quite impressed with it. It was simple, straightforward, straight to the point, seemed to be very permissive. I didn't see half the stuff in there that some of my fellow members of council are worrying about. So I'm just wondering, Mr. Chair, how do we move this along? Because like there's lots of people that have put out lots of things. Ms. Mohammed has taken away 3 that she's going to go look at, but I don't want this to drag on into the next year. What do we need to do to get a motion onto the table to advance this along? Because like the conversation I'm hearing, we're starting to spiral into the same questions over and over and over again, and it just seems like seems like we're really overthinking it as a council. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I thought it was pretty simple.
Okay.
If we're looking at something that people can abuse to the letter of the law and beat somebody with a stick, of course you're going to be able to do that.
Yes.
It's a guideline.
So are you asking, and I noticed that there is no mechanism here for the treatment of violation of the rules, because I had wondered about that myself. Okay, are you asking to finish discussion and move to a vote?
Well, yeah, I'd like, this has gone on now for almost an hour, and we're covering the same points over and over again. So I would like to see a list of action items and a motion and move this forward before we continue to spiral into the basement.
Councilor Stout, can I weigh in for a sec?
Of course.
A couple suggestions that I would put forward is, one is, we've heard a lot of comments, quite frankly, from two councillors specifically. I don't know that you'd want to vote any direction right now, because there's been a lot of good points raised that I would like to take back and reconsider and possibly change some of these wording. The fact that we've, Councillor Van Newkirk and Councillor Monkoff Swain have really zeroed in on this. You could develop a direction that would discount all of their points. And I don't think that's the right thing to do. Suggestion I would make is just let us take this back, take another shot at it, and bring it back to another committee. There's no gun to our head. This thing doesn't need to be put in place by December 15th or what have you. But that would be a suggestion that I would make. The other suggestion is the road you go on, as you direct us specifically. And I fear you're not going to get a direction that's going to be accepted by the majority of council at this point in time.
Okay, thank you. Yes. What I was going to suggest was that we bring forward a motion, and I'll bring it forward to refer the policy back to administration and incorporate suggested changes and bring it forward to a subsequent committee of the whole meeting. Particularly as you've indicated that we have plenty of time to get this right, and I think we do need to get it right and address some of the concerns that have been raised. Would be my position on this. So, was there anybody else wishing to raise any further points, or have we? And by further points, I mean new ones, things that we haven't already discussed. And I'm going to have to open the participants box. Oh, I see two hands up.
Guess which hands are up? Okay,
Councillor Monkoff Swain. Can you keep this brief, though?
I will be extremely brief. Two things to consider. One, I didn't quite see in here a definition around personal pages. So not a councillor page, but like your own personal page. But a lot of times, commenting as behalf of as a city of Beaumont. So just think about that, whether it's your personal account, but still being incorporated in there. And the second one is around advertising and the payment for promoting posts and that sort of stuff. I think we need to have a section in here about the fact that is on the councillor's dime and not to use any city funding or city advertising budget to do that. So just something to think about regarding advertising. Those are my two brief points. Thank you, Councillor Stout, for the additional time.
Thank you. Councillor Van Newkirk.
Thank you. Also brief, big picture. Ms. Mohammed, we went through some media training earlier in the year or earlier in the term. And in that, we kind of discussed at length how to handle inappropriate comments on threads and what is deleted and what's left there on purpose. And it might be helpful to have some guidance around how to handle those situations because I know there were times where the media training person suggested, you know what, leave those there and let the flock take care of it, you know, because it's a horrible comment and other people will jump on it and deal with it. But then there are other times where things are deleted. And then, you know, the world right now, as soon as something is deleted, screams censorship and, you know, their right to freedom of speech and all this kind of crazy stuff that you hear every day on social media. So anyways, I just wonder if there's anywhere in here where we talk about how we handle inappropriate content directly posted on a counselor's page.
So I just have two questions of clarity. The first one regarding advertisement and promotion or promoting, is that during election period? Or you just mean like, are you, my question is in this, the reason why I'm asking this question is because it will help me define whatever that policy is. Are you right now as an elected official, I don't know, paying Facebook or Twitter to boost any of your posts?
So I am.
Okay.
I use that to communicate more broadly.
Okay.
Recent post, I paid Facebook to make sure that as many Beaumont residents would find out what the process is for the budget coming up. So I do that, yes, right now. And it's not election related, obviously. So hopefully that answers your question.
Okay. That does.
You can chat about it offline.
And then the second piece, what I'm hearing is in terms of how to respond to nasty people would be something more along the lines of more of a practice guide, which is something that we could do separately. When we had that training from Red Brick, that's something that could be flipped into a practice guide, right? So it's always there. Like when you start as a new elected official, you're given, here's a guide to social media to help you if you so choose to have an elected official account.
Yeah, fair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Danlock, was there a last comment you had to make?
Yes, very briefly, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much. I appreciate my fellow councillors' comments on this policy. First read through it, I thought it was pretty straightforward. The idea of having a separate account for election made sense, but I'm not very social media savvy, to be perfectly honest, and some of you don't know that already. And some concerns raised about having a separate page versus the same page and changing the name. I'm not really understanding exactly all the nuances of that. So I'm wondering if we can't do it for whatever reason, that's fine. But maybe Mike Berezowski could sit down with myself and else who wants to sit down for half an hour and just talk about the implications of how to have people who are liking you and following you find you again on a new page. Because I'm not feeling, as the conversation went on, I'm becoming more and more less confident I have the ability to really vote this policy and not handcuff myself somehow if I decide to run again down the road somehow. So I'm not sure I'm asking the right question, but I'm not as savvy social media wise as some of my fellow councillors are. And I'm wondering if I'm not fully equipped as I thought I might be to look at this policy and do the justice it needs to be and make sure it's done properly. So maybe we could have a half-hour training session on how you would create a new page and how you would follow it to understand the nuances to see if a separate page is required or simply taking your existing page and renaming it, implications of that, because it is part of the policy here. So I'm feeling a little less adequate in terms of my ability to be objective and look at this policy objectively. If that kind of makes sense, I'm not sure it does, but I know what I'm trying to say. I'm not sure I'm saying it, but anyhow, I'll stop there if I could, please. Thank you.
Is there any training or support on social media available through the city? Mr. Schwartz, Ms. Mohammed?
I'm looking at Mike. Well, I think there's collectively, we had the training from Red Brick. Where we run into problems would be where do we draw the line in terms of you using city resources in order for you to set up a separate page for election? That's where the struggle might be. Mike, I'm not sure if you have.
No, I was going to refer back to the media training and the Red Brick that we brought in earlier, which, you know, it was very poorly attended and it wasn't cheap. But what I would offer, Councillor Danlock, if you've got specific questions, why don't you fire them off to us and we can see what that looks like. And maybe when this policy gets finalized, it's something council would like to do is bring back some more training. That's certainly your right to do that.
Mm-hmm.
If I could ask a quick question, Mr. Chair. So when you say red brick, refresh my memory, was that the guy from Ontario that came and gave us a one-day thing about social media? Because I didn't find that day to be very useful from the moderator. That same guy I'm thinking of, he came about 2 years ago. That the same guy I'm thinking of? Because the media training I had with Kathy and was exceptionally good day. That was a fantastic media training. I'm making my presentation in my head mixed up, but was Redbird the guy from Ontario that came in that you're referring to?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay.
There's others.
I find that day very useful for me being that was just my personal opinion. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be, put it that way. So perhaps I will do that, Mike. We'll say in council time, I'll simply throw off a couple of questions and you can help me as far as you feel you can. And then I'll go that on my own beyond that if I need to. Thank you very much.
I agree that I think it would be a good idea to consider a training possibilities of training once we have this policy finalized. Very well. I will, seeing no more requests to speak, I will just add one small thing of my own, Ms. Mohammed, regarding the use of the term account. It's not actually defined, at least I couldn't find it unless I'm missing it. Because what occurs to me is that, for instance, my own use of Facebook, I have a Facebook account which is my own personal one.
Mm-hmm.
And within that, I have a councillor page, but that's part of the same account. That is when I modify it, it asks me to, when I post something to it, it asks me to post to a page that you maintain, that your account maintains. And so there is and on my personal page, yeah, I'm kind of inclined to put whatever political opinions or I'm going to do and maintain that. And my councillor page, I very much keep that for business and fully intend to do so, for council business rather. But however, technically, if we want to get into a legal argument, then you could argue they're both the same account. So maybe we need some clarity or some distinction there.
Yes, I did have one in the definition. It appears that through our editing process, it's come out. So I'll throw it back in there. So that'll go back in, no problem.
Okay, thank you.
I think that's led to some of the questions too. We really want to make it clear with this policy, what is personal and what is city official, elected official.
Well, it is. Yes, and there is some potential for confusion because, like I say, they're both parts of the same account. However, if I'm commenting on a group in Beaumont Talks, which I have membership of through my councillor page, then it becomes Councillor Martin Stout with a different picture, and so to anybody looking on, it looks like a separate account, but legally or financially, it's technically not. So yeah, potential for confusion there. Okay, thank you. All right, I can move a motion myself, can't I? I will move a motion that we refer this back to administration for modification along the lines suggested in discussion, and that we bring it forward, the modified version is brought forward to a subsequent committee of the whole meeting. All in favor, would you please vote accordingly? And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yes, I've got 7 votes, so that passes unanimously. Thank you. Very well, we can move on to, I've forgotten what the next item on the agenda is. I think we need to move into closed session, don't we? Just a minute.
Yep.
So could I get a motion, please, to move us into closed session?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Mayor Stewart, thank you. All in favor? Again, would you please indicate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Who am I missing? 7. It was me. Okay, that passes unanimously, and we are now in closed We're now out of closed session. Item 5, councillor inquiries. Are there any councillors wishing to make inquiries this evening?
No.
Going once, going twice, 3 times, seeing none. I will proceed to item 6. Information items. CAO.
Sorry about that. No, just a couple of things I would toss out. Councillor Barnhart, you sent an email today about looking at how we can, if at all, assist or try and help out with the situation at the Chateau Vitiline. We're reaching out to them. Our FCSS staff are reaching out to them to ask that very question, and we'll see what we can do. It's obviously a horrible situation going on over there, and we wish everybody the best. And again, thank you to our healthcare workers who are working their tails off. The other message I would like to throw out, and this is more to the public, is a lot of the information we're getting for AHS, and councillors know this because you've acknowledged it back and forth, has been very confusing, especially on this 2-week pause or whatever you want to call it. And this has been particularly tough on our rec staff. So I would ask the members of the public if they could try and keep that, be aware of it. And I get it. The people are done. They want their lives back. It's that emotional end to a pandemic. We talked about this before. This pandemic is going to end. But we ask you to exercise as much patience as you can. The rules are changing almost daily. We're having to interpret because there's lack of information. And the feedback I'm getting from our rec staff is they're particularly on the front end of this and having to deal with plenty of angry people. So, we're trying to do the best and provide as much service as we can under these trying times. So just ask you to check that a little bit and cut some people some slack. Everybody's bringing their A game every day and trying to do the best they can. And the last comment I would make is, thank you, councillors, for the budget questions we're getting in. I know Councillor Van Newkirk, you're going to send us a few today as well. We will provide answers back to you, and I think it's going to lead to a much more robust budget workshop for next week. So thank you.
Can I just ask a question on that? I wasn't quite sure on the process. Are you going to be providing answers back to us in written form prior to the budget, or are you going to be answering those as we go through the budget workshop? Sorry, did you just clarify that?
Sure. No, we intend to provide answers to you before the workshop, likely on Tuesday, if I recall Mike's process, because we also want to be able to provide the public with the responses to those questions as well.
So it'll be one document with all the list of questions. Are they going to be attributed? Are they going to be a section by council? How does that look? And if you don't know, that's fine. I'm just trying to understand how this is going to work. I think it's the right.
I don't know the answer to that, but I'll get clarification and we'll send out an email tomorrow.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Right. Yes. What I was going to say was thank you, CIO Schwartz. Yeah, very much the message there, particularly regarding the rec staff, is don't shoot the messenger. It's they're doing what they have to do. Very well. All right. That takes us to item 8, emerging issues. Are there any emerging issues? Is anybody wanting to speak to this? No? Very well. That brings us to adjournment. Would anybody like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting? Councillor Hendricks? Can't hear you. You're muted.
So moved.
Thank you. All in favour of adjournment, please vote. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We are